everybody, how's it going? It's your old buddy Morbid Matsky here, and today we are going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite franchises, and the one that started it all for me, A Nightmare on Elm Street, as you may have guessed. There's been some cool news recently with the 4K sets that are coming out, including the Steelbook Sets, there's UK, North American version. I want to cover some of that and just get into my history and my love of this franchise. So let's get into it. Alright guys, so for me, A Nightmare on Elm Street was really the franchise that started it all for me. You know, like I had seen some horror movies when I was really little. I remember seeing most of Poltergeist, probably 83-ish, you know, maybe, yeah, I would say sometime probably in 1983. And I know it was shown on TV a few times, so, you know, I may have caught it there. As well as I'd seen, you know, some parts of like Halloween on TV here and there. Never the whole film though, you know, I was too young, and of course my parents wouldn't be letting me do that. But I actually started getting into horror movies when I was about 10 years old. It would have been 1986. Yep, I'm that old already. But anyway, back then, what had happened was I had a friend who was about a year older than me or so, really good friend, probably my best friend growing up. He had, well, his parents had a video membership, and they had a beta machine. Actually, it was beta that I was watching this stuff on. My parents eventually got a VHS not long after, but my buddy had a rental membership at this place, and his parents would pretty much let him rent whatever he wanted. So it was really cool. So, you know, we'd frequently have sleepovers and stuff, and anytime I would go to his place, we'd almost always pick like some cool horror movie, right? Well, it all started with A Nightmare on Elm Street and A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, you know, Freddy's Revenge. So for me back in 86, I had only heard about Freddy as being some scary guy in a, you know, horror movie that'll try to kill you or whatever, or he has, you know, like finger knives or something, right? Like, you didn't hear too much about it. You just knew Freddy was scary, and, you know, just like you knew that Jason with the hockey mask would be scary and stuff. But I never saw any of those movies. I just heard about Freddy, you know, and we decided to go ahead and rent these two films. So we watched them both during this sleepover. So it was in 1986. I saw the first one for the first time, as well as the second film. And yeah, we were hooked right away. You know, I was obsessed with this glove. You know, like I was completely obsessed with this. I love the movie. It was so exciting. It was really scary, and you know, both of us were like, "Oh man, we want one of these gloves so bad." I mean, not to do anything crazy with them, but they were just so cool looking, right? You know, and I loved cosplaying and pretending and stuff way back earlier than that. So anyway, what I used to do is I used to make gloves like this out of, well, I would steal gloves from my mom or dad or whatever, any kind of work glove I could get my hands on, whether it was cloth or leather. My dad didn't like it when I cut up the leather ones and stuff. That didn't go over too well. But anyway, I would do it even on, you know, like cloth gloves. So I would just basically do a template out of paper like this, nothing this fancy, like I didn't have anything wrapping around, but I would have a back plate piece like this, and I would have sections here on the fingers and then other sections here. And it was all out of paper. It was really ridiculous, you know, like I would just cut out the pieces and like tape them on with clear tape so you can really see it very well. And then even the blades were paper. I would just take sheets of paper and I would crease them and roll them up like a whole 8x10. Nice and tight, and that would be the blade, and then I just trim the end to shape it, you know, and literally tape them on the end, up and over and around. And on the inside, of course, I do a little hand cutout and all the little finger cutouts and stuff. So I was doing this silly cosplay stuff way back when I was a kid, but they just didn't have any cool Freddy Krueger makeup or anything like that back then. You know, the first thing that came out was that Dawn Post latex mask, and I think that was out around that time already, but not where I lived anyway. It didn't show up in any of our stores or anything until about, I think it was 1988, because I remember our local Shirley Botter Costumes actually had it, and I was, you know, begging my mom to get it. But at the time, I think it was, I think it was 70 or 80 bucks, which was, that's a ton of money back then. So unfortunately, that never worked out for me. Funny though, the next year in '89, when Batman came out with Keaton, I got that. It's probably a little hard to see here. Back there, I have a Michael Keaton 1989 mask from that time. It's latex, in really good shape. But it was from Shirley Botter Costumes, and around the same price. But I was able to convince Mom that year. But I never was lucky enough to get the Freddy mask, unfortunately. So anytime I wanted to be Freddy, which was a few times when I was younger, I just had to sort of do my own. I have to dig out the pictures, because I know there's a few pictures here and there that again would be in storage at my folks' place, like a lot of my Nightmare on Elm Street gear and stuff from when I was a kid. So I'll have to go through and see what I can find there. But I definitely had to use, you know, other methods. Like I had a bald hair cap on, and I put like liquid latex all over my face, and just tried to make it look like burns. And, you know, I was a little kid. It didn't look very good. I also asked my mom to knit me a red and green sweater, and bless her heart, she certainly tried. She had, I remember the front and back sections just about done, and was having trouble with it and didn't have the time. And eventually, a friend of hers that she knew did it for her, and she just paid her. You know, so I had this red and green sweater that was knitted for me. I remember being annoyed because the neck was green, the upper part here, and it was all supposed to be red. It was red at the bottom of the cuffs and everything, right? So I remember that was like, it's not accurate, you know? So back then, I was grateful, don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like I was like, well, this is dumb. I just remember being, you know, annoyed by that already. Like all these highly detailed cosplay, I guess all the fussiness I have with it and stuff was there at a young age. But anyway, we always wanted one of these things. These are so badass. So I was really excited to finally get my hands on one that looks so much like the original. Essentially a template glove with all of these pieces. I just don't have the high-end blades that Kurt does. This glove was done by Kurt Gates of you know, Springwood Replicas. And yeah, he makes really nice gloves. I think he's since retired, but yeah, great guy. I actually won a glove off of Kurt from Springwood years back, and I remember he was bugging me about getting my address for a few weeks because I didn't realize I had won. And he finally got it, and it never did make it to me. I never saw it. Nothing happened there, unfortunately. I'm sure he had sent it, and it was probably seized in customs. It was probably one of those things where it's like, oh, you're not sending that. You know, it's almost like it depends on who's checking them, because this one made it to me, you know. But then again, the tips, you know, on the Part 2 gloves and stuff are a little bit rounded. They're not that pointy. If you look in the film, that's kind of how they look. So maybe that's why. And I've been able to wear this to conventions and stuff, and people haven't freaked out. He does the little details on them to make them look like they're sharp and everything, you know, like make the little I don't know, it looks cool. It looks like they're sharp, but they're, you know, they're definitely not. They don't cut anything at all, you know. So they're pretty safe, and again, not pokey. So I think that's why they've been pretty lenient at the cons that I've ever brought this to. Absolutely adore that glove. I always thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I was pretty much obsessed with that thing early on. But you know, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, is one of the greatest horror films ever made, in my opinion, and certainly one of the greatest slashers ever. Very, very clever movie. I still think it's Wes Craven's best. I know some people think it's Scream. Fair enough. You know, I love Scream. I adore Scream. It's amazing what Wes did in the mid '90s with that, and you know, Kevin Williamson. But you know, for me, it's always been A Nightmare on Elm Street. I feel like Scream wouldn't have been able to happen if it wasn't for A Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, I mean, really, what Wes was able to do and the reputation he got. You know, he had a lot of trust at that point, I'm sure, when Scream was being made to go ahead with something like that. So I'm sure A Nightmare on Elm Street played a strong role. Anyway, it's always been my favorite. You know, I know some people think Dream Warriors is the best. Again, you know, to each their own. I totally get that. Dream Warriors is for sure probably the most fun, and it's my number 2 for sure. You know, I love that movie. For me, you know, like I said, I watched this in '86 and Dream Warriors wasn't out yet, and I was so looking forward to Dream Warriors, but me being a little kid, I couldn't see it at all. And in Canada, you can't have like your parents bring you, you know, to Restricted or anything. It's no one under 18 can see Restricted in Canada. It's just the way it was. So I couldn't get in to see any of those films until I was literally 18 years old, which really sucked. Anyway, home video always cured that, so I always had to wait, you know, 3-4 months down the road or so until it was available for rental. But the thing about 3, you know, it is the most fun, like I said. That movie really changed a lot about how, you know, Freddy was perceived, right? Like, he became this pop culture phenomenon after part 3, you know? Like, he was everywhere. You know, he was on magazine covers, he was doing like commercials and stuff. You could finally get like a plastic version of this glove. I remember it being in San Francisco stores in Canada. They were basically like Spencer before Spencer. And I bought lots of them there. They were called the Fright Glove. Of course, it was a knockoff, but those are the ones we got our hands on first. So I had several of those, and those were exciting to have over the years. But he was just everywhere, you know. So the only problem with Freddy becoming this huge pop culture icon in your face on posters and marketing and you know, little toys and stuff everywhere is it really took away his scariness, you know. He just wasn't as scary a character anymore. He was more like the comedian killer that people were having a ball to watch, you know, do his thing, which was cool, you know. But I feel like so many people missed out because, like, if you truly knew A Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, prior to '87, prior to Dream Warriors coming out, Freddy Krueger was really terrifying. Like, he was a scary, scary character. He didn't have a ton of lines, and they were usually pretty serious. And even if he would, you know, saying something a little bit clever, like "You've got the body, I've got the brains," it was still terrifying. You know, the face pull-off scene in the original film and everything. Like, he was a very scary character, and you didn't see a lot of him. And I really miss that. I think that's what made him so great in the beginning. It's like so many people will never truly know how scary he really was before Dream Warriors. He was just a totally different character. And sure, like, if you've never seen them before, you can go back, you can be like, well, I can watch the first one and the second one before seeing the others and get the same idea. Sort of. But it's just not quite the same, because the size of the phenomenon that Freddy in A Nightmare on Elm Street was, it's massive. Like, it's so hard for somebody nowadays to watch the original Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, having not seen any of them before and going up in order, without being exposed to Freddy already at some point. Like, they've probably seen a picture of him somewhere, they've seen a meme, they've seen some little bit, or somebody dressed up as him. There's no element of surprise there. They know who Freddy Krueger is. He's that guy with the, you know, the thing. He's got the you know, that's basically what they look at. Or he's the, you know, the burnt guy in the striped sweater, whatever. You know, I've never seen those movies. Like, a lot of people that aren't into them know who Freddy Krueger is, who haven't even watched the movies. And if they go back, you're just not going to get that same feeling of how scary he can be, because in your mind you're still remembering that meme he was in, or like whatever. Like, he had an album, you know, the Elm Street Group. It was released, I think, in 87, maybe 88. But I still have a cassette tape at my mom's place, you know, with a lot of my Nightmare collectible stuff. So, yeah, I'll have to go through that someday when I get a chance. But I know I have that cassette tape still, and I got it back then, and it was really quite terrible music. It was ridiculous, but, you know, Freddy would be like, you know, cracking one-liners throughout the songs and everything, and he was kind of in your face, and, you know, he was like your loud uncle who was a serial killer with a claw. He had absolutely no scariness to him at all. So I do feel bad for the newer generations that never got to experience that. I feel like that's why Nightmare, of all these big ones out there, you know, Halloween, Friday, Texas Scream, Child's Play, whatever, Nightmare seems to have really gone swept under the rug, kind of, you know. You know, it's kind of like the reboots, you know. Nothing against Jackie Earle Haley, great actor, and I'm sure he would have been fine for the job. It's just the whole concept was way off. I think they went wrong by making the burns look more realistic, sure, but it's not really Freddy's look, right? Jason Universe, are you listening? Keep Jason's look, man. Like, you're messing with that mask way too much with those eye holes and all the 13 drill holes, because it's clever. Friday the 13th, let's put 13 drill holes. Dumb idea, but I wouldn't mess with that. I wouldn't mess with Freddy's look either. They changed his hat, they changed the glove, looked different, you know, it had like the sort of straps that I wouldn't mess with it. If I had do a new Nightmare on Elm Street film, like if it were me being a fan, I would make it look essentially just like this. I mean, it doesn't have to be like exactly, but this design with the plate and the extent, like that's Freddy's thing. You know, that's what he's had in all the films. Like Dream Warriors 4, you know, got a little more warm. I think that was over the top. I like a look like this because this looks more simply made by a guy in his basement who's probably a serial killer. And it's an iconic look, that glove. You know, I wouldn't mess with that. Just like, you know, the red and green sweater, you know, give him a few stripes. I don't care if you have it on his sleeves or not, like the first, like those little details I don't think matter as much, but if I could do it, I would say stick to makeup that reminds us all of like Freddy's Revenge makeup. I still say that is the coolest, scariest looking Freddy Krueger. Like, he looked like a male witch, which is what they were going for, you know, a bit of a hook nose, the heavy brow, and the ears are all kind of melty, and it's like, I know that's not how ears would melt. I get that, you know, but still, it's a really cool look, and he looked terrifying in those movies. You know, if I could redo it, I would say make Freddy say less. You know, let's not make him a comedian. Let's keep him serious. Maybe he's got a line or two, but not too funny, and always keep it terrifying. And usually saying less is more. That's the only advice I would give, coming from a fan that's, you know, doesn't want to be disappointed the next time they finally put out a film, because I'm sure it's coming eventually. And of all the times too, with this 4K set that's coming out as well, I wouldn't be surprised if, while this stuff is hot, they maybe make an announcement, if they have any plans at all, to do any kind of a, you know, like a movie project or something. Hopefully we'll get to hear something, because there's a lot of hype around this 4K set. So regarding the 4K box set, here is a look at what was released last week. This is the Amazon set. You know, really cool looking Steelbook set. It's got, you know, some kind of, they look like variations of the one sheet art on all of them, which looks pretty cool, so I'm pretty happy about that. Everything it comes with looks pretty good. We're going to get an extended version of the Dream Child that we haven't had available, I think, since the days of video. So Zavi just probably in the last 12 hours or so released pictures of the 4K Steelbook set that we've all pre-ordered, or some of us have anyway. I did. I also pre-ordered the Amazon ones. I wasn't sure if they were going to be the same or not, and you know, this franchise is dear to me, and I really haven't spent a lot this year on any of this stuff. As you know, I've really cut back on the t-shirts and stuff too, so I was sort of holding off for this set because I thought there might be a variation. And there is, but it looks like it's not as big as I thought it would be. It looks like the main difference is the UK version, the Zombie version here, you'll notice has the Blu-ray discs as well. That's really the only difference I'm seeing here, is if you're getting it off Amazon, you're getting digital codes. And if you're getting it from Zombie, you're getting the actual Blu-ray discs as well. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be region B locked. That would make sense if it's just the UK. So that could very well be. I would expect that. If it's not, I don't know for sure, but anyway, we have the news now, and I'm super excited for it. It's very cool to know it's gonna be some nice artwork and all the rest of it, and not this goofy AI image that had everybody freaking out. Like I said, I didn't believe that for a second. I was a little disappointed that too many people did, but I get it. You know, the previous artwork for that first film was not done all that well. But it sounds like they listened to the fans and made some adjustments, and it looks so far like they're going to be pretty good. So I hope the quality matches the quality of these sets. I mean, by quality, I mean, of course, the picture quality and how it looks with this with the new transfer. So anyway, that is some exciting news for sure with the franchise, but I just wanted to get into that a little bit, that, you know, it's always been the one that started everything for me. You know, I don't know if it's my favorite franchise. I'm awfully partial to Halloween. I love Friday the 13th. They're probably maybe a little more up my alley, but Nightmare started it all for me, and, you know, there's never been a cooler weapon in the history of slashers than this thing. Like, come on. You could say Jason's machete's iconic, Michael's kitchen knife, but that Freddy Krueger glove, badass. That's pretty awesome. And Robert's always been a hell of a Freddy, but there's going to be a time where somebody else is going to have to take the reins. And really, I don't think you have to have Freddy be so comedic and be this super established actor. It's probably not a bad idea, you know, but I would prefer him to have less lines and stay scary. I think that will make him way cooler. And I think the movies would be a success if they sort of went that route and stayed kind of true to the best looks. I mean, that's what you would think a person would do if they're going to remake a movie, or, you know, do a movie in the franchises. I would pretty much go through the other ones and go, okay, well, where do we think Freddy looked best? And it's like, why don't we try to go for that kind of look? And I'm not saying you have to match part two, but if you go with makeup that looks more like that, I think that makeup is more terrifying. I think that the hookish nose and stuff, I think that works well. He really looks more demonic and terrifying. So if you went that direction, I think that's a good idea. I think if you kept the glove looking pretty much like the original glove, like the Dream Warriors glove, you know, to an extent, I think that's a winner. Again, the sweater, I don't think it needs to be, doesn't necessarily have to have, you know, stripes on the sleeves or whatever. Either it can just be whatever you guys want to do, yes or no. Maybe you take the stripes away from the sleeves as an homage to the original. I don't know. Maybe you use a gray fedora with a band, you know, like in the first one. Again, I don't think those things are as important, but I do think the makeup look, try to make them look kind of like our Freddy, you know, and pick the best looking makeup. And I think consensus usually is part two. Sure, there was Demon Freddy from Freddy vs. Jason. Yes, that's very cool, but I don't think that's realistic for a Freddy look, like a regular Freddy look. I still say Freddy's Revenge was the most terrifying. I would go for that kind of look. So personally, I think they do that, they would do well. And as for actors to play him, for me, I started thinking about this a few months back. I thought Walton Goggins is a great actor, and he has this amazing heavy brow and like deep eyes. And I think he would look really terrifying in makeup like that. And he's a very accomplished actor. He's good at playing villains. I just think he'd be great in the role. I think he'd be awesome. He'd probably be my first choice, Walton Goggins. There's others, but that's one that just sort of, I remember it came to me a while back, and then I posted something, I think on Reddit, when someone was talking about it. And some time went by, a week or two went by, and I saw a post on like Twitter where it said, Walton Goggins for, Freddy Krueger, what do you think? And I thought, what the hell? I've never heard anybody mention that ever before. So I don't know if that was like an independent thought, or they probably saw the thread and they're talking about Elm Street and we're like, oh, there's one. Maybe, what do you think of this guy? I don't know if that was right for me, but I had never heard anybody talk about Walton Goggins as Freddy before when I brought it up anyway. So yeah, it's good to know some people would get behind that. I thought he'd be pretty cool in the role. That's all. But I love this franchise. I'm really excited the 4K is finally coming, and it looks like I'll have 2 sets that are pretty similar. But I will be happy to have the Blu-rays, because I never did get the Blu-rays. I still have the original DVD set, which, let me show you that. So this right here is the original DVD set, and you'll notice this picture right here. That was from a photo shoot for part 4, as you can tell by the glove. But he's wearing a coat in that shoot, and it's a very specific shoot, and I don't think he wore it in anything else. But this was way back in the Dream Master era, so not sure where the coat came from, but I know I still have a magazine that has that photo shoot in it. Again, somewhere at my mom's place. I got to go through my stuff. But I've always loved this set. Thought it looks really, really cool. And it's got the new Nightmare Freddy on this side. This has everything in it, of course, except for Freddy vs. Jason, because that wasn't out just yet. But one thing I've always kept intact, you might notice, is this information band that goes all the way around. Almost every set I see of somebody having this, they do not have this on here anymore. Like, it's like you've torn it off, and I can tell you this has been a pain in the ass for me over all the years of taking this off and on very carefully so it does not rip, because it is very delicate, because it is a thin piece of paper. And yeah, it has this full description of everything on it, and I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to just tear it off or fold it up and stick it in here so I still have it. I want it on the box all the time. So every time I want to watch something, I have to slowly slide this off, and it's rather time consuming, and it's hard to line up perfectly and get on without it ripping. So that's kind of some dedication I've had with this one, but I always thought this set was pretty badass, and it's cool to see this art on the regular set. That's what they used for the non-Steelbook collection. For everybody else that just wants everything in 4K, that's the picture they use, which is pretty cool. I do like that photo. So again, this has been the best set so far in my opinion. I was never impressed with the Blu-ray one, just a little thin thing with everything stacked up inside. I thought they sort of phoned that in, and it was one of those situations where I'm like, I like the DVD one enough that I'm not going to bother with Blu-ray. I was kind of annoyed with it at first, so I just left it. Then when 4K came out, I started thinking, well, I'll just wait for the 4K because it'll eventually come out. It took a while. It took a while, but thank goodness it's finally coming now, and hopefully it's a worthy predecessor to this one, because this one is definitely my favorite over all the years that has come out. So one of the other things in my collection I've had a long time is this book. It's the Nightmares on Elm Street parts 1, 2, 3, the continuing story. The classic horror movie series, including the new Nightmare, plus a special bonus chapter, The Life and Death of Freddy Krueger. By the way, when he says including the new Nightmare, he means Dream Warriors, which was not released when this came out. So at this point, this came out in probably early '87. And a friend of mine got it, the same friend who introduced me to the movie. He found it in a convenience store and was showing it to me, and I'm like, oh my God, were there any more? And he said, yeah, there's 1 or 2 of them. So of course I flew down there and bought it. It was really cheap at the time. Where's the price? Yeah, it's $4.95 Canadian. This was a $5 book, which is one of the only reasons my 10-year-old ass could afford it. You know, had it for a while. This is a really cool collectible. The glove is sort of raised here, and it's got this cool picture of Robert on the back from part 2. It's sort of a reverse photo because the glove's a lefty there, which isn't right, but it's just a novelization basically of the movies with some pictures in the middle, you know, from the first 2 films and stuff. It's very cool. They're hard to find these days, but I've had this forever, and yeah, it's got this neat chapter in the back called The Life and Death of Freddy Krueger, which is, I guess it must be Jeffrey Cooper's idea of, you know, sort of a little prequel to A Nightmare on Elm Street in description, not like a film. Like I said, it's just a chapter. It's probably like 3-4 pages. In fact, what I'll do is I will post separately. I'll read this, The Life and Death of Freddy Krueger, and just post it separately if anybody wants to know the story, because it's really short. But I'll post that separate just so if you guys are interested, I'll make sure that I get that up for you as well, because it's a neat little story about, you know, Freddy being raised by, you know, some horrible person, you know, and basically how he gets to start murdering children. So interesting anyway. But that's one of the few collectibles I still have in my possession after all of these years. But anyway, the franchise, like I said, for me has always been a huge deal because it really brought me to horror. As soon as I saw those movies, I was pretty hooked, you know, like I was like, wow, these are so exciting. And I got into all of the stuff after that, you know, the floodgates open, we started watching Friday the 13th movies up until then, and of course all the Halloween films, which made Jason Lives super exciting when the trailers for that came out on TV in '86 too, and we're like, oh my god, Jason Lives, they're making a new Friday the 13th, and I actually knew who he was, you know. This was the first new movie when I even realized what it was about, so that was a special one for me, and I think that's probably why it's my favorite. Really close with part 4 with that one, but anyway, I'm sure it had a lot to do with it, but Nightmare was the gateway to those, and yeah, I have the franchise to thank for that. So much respect to Wes Craven, rest in peace. He is the man that brought us Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's still one of my favorite films to this day, and I think one of the best horror films ever made for sure. So anyhow, that's sort of my my background with The Nightmare on Elm Street, and just a little bit on why I love it so much. So what do you guys think of the franchise, and when did you get into it? When did you watch it for the first time? Let me know in the comments your experience with the franchise. You know, I really think a lot of people are sort of sleeping on it, and it's not their fault. They didn't, they weren't there when he was really scary and super intriguing before the whole comedian thing. And we just haven't had a new film in so long. A lot of the younger folks and fans just don't know what they were missing. That's kind of what it feels like. Anyway, that is it for now, you guys. I appreciate you watching. If you stuck around for the whole thing, I will be back in a new video soon enough for you guys. And until then, you take care, and we'll see you again.